Oh, I started already.
Great. In that case, I also have started.
Delightful. What a day. Hello, team.
Welcome.
Hello, friends.
Hi, team.
Happy fucking Wednesday.
Happy fucking Wednesday. I want that on a pillow.
This is how this is gonna go. This episode is late. It's a Wednesday. I had to turn off my air conditioner so we could record. Oh, there's a fucking bug in here! No!
Oh God! And I can't help.
No.
I can't help you. I am.
Would you help if you were here?
Oh, absolutely not.
What type of bug is that? Is it a flea? Or a fly? What is it? And well, it's annoying is what it is.
Shoe fly.
Anyway,
don't
welcome to the
me.
Fic List, everybody.
And if that isn't like the perfect like example of where we're at today, I don't know what is.
Ooh, yep.
It's been a rough one,
it's
friends.
A rough one. It is June 30th. This episode is supposed to go out on July 1st. I don't think you're listening to this on July 1st.
Yeah, I have an inkling. It didn't work out.
Nope. It's just a thought. I mean, I would be interested to know. Let us know when you hear this episode. Because we don't know.
Yes, please somehow send a message back to June 30th at 6 p.m. and let us know when it finally makes it up.
Just tell us when we manage to get this episode live. It's going to be a fun episode. We have a fun tag in store today, and by fun I mean slightly devastating emotionally and very difficult to find fix for. But I'm trying to find the positive here.
Oh my God, you're doing great, sweetie.
No, existential angst, the musical. Let's do it. What's our tag today, Alan?
Our tag today is time loop.
Time loop. Do you read time loop fic?
I have on occasion whenever I come across them. I think they're so interesting to me. I love when people take a concept and then build around it, and like every time loop is like slightly different. It's one of those things you're like, you have to have a system in place for it. Like if you build a fantasy world, you have to build like laws for magic. How does it work and all of that stuff. So I'm so into that and finding out how everything works for that time loop. I take it from your reaction that you might not read as many time loops. I
don't read time loops. I don't like contrivances. So, we're winning all the things today.
Excellent.
It's fine. I don't actively dislike time loops. It's just certainly not something that I've ever like gone out of my way to read. And I don't know that that's going to change after this experience. Because, oh boy, does it get depressing fast. And I read a lot of angsty things, but a lot of the fics that I was reading were just like sad. And I didn't need that. I didn't need it. It's not that it's bad. And I understand. What's sort of funny is I understand the appeal of it, and I think as a writing device and like in like movies and other stuff, I think it's delightful. But like I don't, for some reason, when you read it, when it's instead of being in like film form, there's something about it that I didn't care for just as a trope.
Fascinating.
And I haven't fully examined why that is or like figured out a concrete or logical reason for it. And it could just be that I'm finicky. That is how it is. But yeah, that was a thing that I struggled with with this, trying to find a fic for you. I did eventually find one.
You did.
But I read a lot that I was like, I cannot send this to Alan. It'll break him.
Listen, I appreciate that so hard because I think I had such a rough time just this go around of it that if you had sent me something to emotionally devastate me, I don't think I'd be here. I'd be somewhere else. I'd be committed.
Anything with the tag major character death got automatically X'd out.
Oh no.
Because I was like, I might be able to handle this. Alan cannot.
How people can handle and like write it. That's what I want. If you've ever written a major character death, please write in and let me know, how do you do it? How does your heart not break into a million little pieces? How do you come to that decision?
I guess everyone processes shit differently and like uses fic to process different things. So like, cool, fine, whatever. I just like, that is not what I seek in my fiction.
No.
Particularly in media that like doesn't have canonical character death. I'm like, no. You're just supposed to gently torture them. They're not supposed to die. Like, it goes too far. To me, like, major character death is a step too far in the angst direction.
I see.
That goes from, like, an interesting thing and something that I can, like, be on board with and, like, vibe with to just, like, oh, now I'm sad.
You know, this one time,
this is not good.
When I was a baby fanfic reader, I was reading a Naruto fanfic, shocker to no one, and I was just happily on my way. I was reading through it, and then I get to the final chapter, and I really know what to expect. And I read a lot of, to be clear, I read a lot of, like, crack, a lot of, like, funny stuff like that, and every now and then, like, some serious bits would happen. And then this fic kills off, I think they killed off Sasuke or Naruto. They killed one of the two off, and I cried all night. I could not read something for like a week.
Poor little BB Weeaboo Alan.
It was devastating.
I can picture it. Is that the source of your soft boy Alan persona?
It might be.
Was that the day that you were reborn?
I remember it clearly, and I remember the pain clearly. I remember how hard I cried.
Definitely not the vibe. So time loops that had any, like, permanent character death was, like, a hard pass, because I came to a couple where it was like the way to break the time loop was to, like, die, and I was like,
no,
this is a lot to process on a Thursday afternoon. So we didn't. There's also probably just, like, fair warning, this episode is going to end up having a lot of, like, content warnings that are worth just sort of blanket statementing that there's a lot of dark shit in this episode. So, like, if that's not the headspace you're in, that's fine. It's cool. This is one to skip. It's all good. Yeah. But, like, holy shit, y'all. This is a lot. So, on that note, is there anything that we like about time loops?
Wow.
Like, that's what we talk about, is what do we like about the tag, and I'm like, we just kind of, like, ragged on it for 20 minutes. What do we like about it?
I didn't rag on it. You ragged on it.
Okay, I ragged on it.
Using the royal we.
Here we are.
So, things I like about time loop. I love like, the characters having to figuring out every day and, like, trying new things and how it affects other characters and how it affects the timeline, etc. I think that it's so fascinating. It all comes down to the mechanics for me. I really, really enjoy it.
Yay.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely happy for you.
I appreciate that.
Yep. So on that note, do you want to talk first, or do you want me to talk first?
Why don't I talk first?
That sounds like a great plan. I'm going to keep watching this bug as it, like, figures out its life.
Great. If at any point you scream, I'll know that it's over for you.
Okay. It's probably, I think, I haven't figured out if it's a horsefly or a very small wasp. So, TBD.
Fingers crossed for a horsefly.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Proceed.
Oh, boy. All right. So, Aaron sent me a fic titled Hard to Reconcile. It's on Archive of Our Own. It is written by user Karith? Kaerith, and it is the Old Guard fic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, surprising no one, I've not seen this film.
How did I know that this was going to be the situation?
I'm surprised you've seen this film.
I think I watched it with a certain ex-partner of mine who was interested in seeing it. And I was like, okay. And then we watched it. And then I was like, okay. I enjoyed it. I had a good time.
I was very shocked. My extent of the knowledge of that movie was that it was a popular hashtag on TikTok when it came out. Because people will do that. They'll put
TikTok?
They'll put the tag of whatever's trending to try and get their TikTok, like, higher on the, like, For You page algorithm or whatnot. And so that was right around when I started. So I remember asking my roommate, "What is the Old Guard, and why are people talking about it?" And she had to explain it to me because I am a grandfather.
Who uses the TikTok?
Yes, exactly. I was getting into it with all the youngsters.
What do you do, fellow kids?
Indeed. Yeah, so this is an Old Guard fic. I have not seen the movie. It is between Joe or Yusuf and Nikki or Nicolo. Don't know anything about the film, don't know the premise, but what I can tell you is the summary for this fic reads, Yusuf knows what's happening. Sometimes soulmates are able to find one another. At the first touch of skin on skin, a specific magic happens. The two people will relive the events of a time period over and over until they are able to find out who their soulmate is and break the loop with a kiss. No one from the legends ever met their soulmate in a battle such as this, Yusuf would swear. There are thousands of men. How is Yusuf supposed to find the only one who matters? I think that's either half an excerpt summary or fully an excerpt summary. I know the first part is an excerpt. That being said, we get into the fic, and it's very straightforward. It's told mostly from Yusuf's, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, in the pronunciation, if you remember.
I think it's correct. They go by Joe and Nikki mostly in the film because by the time the film comes around, it is well past this point in history. Like, it is modern day. So they go by Joe and Nikki.
Are they like reincarnations in the movie?
No. It is. Would it be helpful to start off with a very brief explainer of what this movie is about?
Just tell me how. Are they immortal?
They're immortal.
I see. Excellent. I think that's all I needed to know. That is the context I need. Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
I might have more questions at the end.
I'm sure. And I will happily answer them to the best of my ability. It's also been like a year and a half since I saw this movie. But, it's cool.
Yeah. So it takes place between a battle where Yusuf is on one side and Niccolo is on the other with the Christians. And Yusuf realizes that he is in a loop, and that means that he has touched his soulmate and needs to figure out who it is. And so I think we meet him when it's the fourth time he's been through his day. And every time he's trying to remember what he did his first time, basically, and narrows it down to having killed 5 people. And being dealt a killing blow by the last one. So the loop here happens whenever he dies, or sleeps, but usually it's dies because he's in the midst of a battle. And so Yusuf is trying to figure out the most creative way to get his soulmate's attention, because he just wants to get a kiss and get it over with, because he realizes that, oh well, they're not on my side, so that is a problem, and I guess does not bode well for a future relationship. And so he tells people on his army, on his side, that he's in a soulmate loop, and they are very understanding, which is really nice. And I was like, get you friends like those. Those are the type of friends you need. They were like,
took a break from active warfare to be like, go get your man.
Yeah, go get your boo.
Lord God almighty.
Yep, I loved it. And so so Yusuf goes out and like waves like a flag at the top of some like tower or something, and he's like, hello, I am in a soulmate loop and I'm looking for my soulmate, and then he's shot with an arrow.
Yeah. Correct.
And then he tries again, and he's like, all right, we're gonna try this one more time. I'm gonna try it from a different angle, and then he gets chopped. I think he gets axed in the face, and it just doesn't go well. And it happens, I think, 3 or 4 times, and then finally he goes out there and yells, if you're out there, meet me at the gate, and then walks back because he's done. And so eventually Niccolo comes and they meet, and they have this whole conversation. And at one point, basically, Niccolo says, oh, I never imagined it would be with someone like you. So very racist undertones. And so Yusuf kind of knows that there's no future in this with him. And they kind of strike a deal where they are going to just keep meeting up in secret and like getting to know each other. And once one of them feels like they're ready to die, because that's really the only way that they see out of this loop. They're in the middle of a battle. They're not going to survive. Mm-hmm. Once one of them is ready to go, then they'll kiss and break it. And so over the course of the fic, they start getting closer, and like, of course, they notice how attractive they each are. And there's a big shift that happens with Nicolo's character, where he came into this very like from the, and I'm very bad at history, but it's, that standard Christians trying to take over the Holy Land.
It's literally the Crusades.
Thank you. That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say because I didn't trust myself fully.
Yep. Oh no, trust yourself. It's literally the Crusades.
So it's during the Crusades.
Yep.
And so Nicola's having this whole reckoning where he's thinking, this can't be ordained by God. This can't be holy. Like seeing all the death and destruction and getting to know Yusuf more, and Yusuf saying, I used to be a merchant, and when I lived with my family, we would do art, and that's what I would be doing if I wasn't. So I'm a soldier by necessity. I'm a killer out of necessity. And that really hits Niccolo really strongly. And he's starting to kind of realize, oh, I'm not fighting a war that is just or justified or holy. This is just the greed of man. And so they spend toward the end of the fic, Niccolo's trying to figure out a way to like turn the tide. And he like during one of the loops tries to talk to his side and be like, this is not right. And of course they strike him down and kill him, because at that point they're in the midst of battle. It's not like they're getting ready for battle. They are in the battle, and they are not interested in like a ceasefire. And so on like this last loop, this last go around, Niccolo is like pretty downtrodden that his plans aren't working and he's not able to affect change. And so he says, I think I'm ready to go. And so Yusuf agrees and says, let's meet in the middle of the battlefield, because usually it's been Niccolo making his way through his army, through Yusuf's army, and then getting to that side. So the agreement is to meet in the middle of the battlefield. And once they get there, Niccolo's like has really shiny eyes, and he explains to Yusuf like, oh, I told them I'm in a soulmate loop, and like that we can talk things out. And there's like a ceasefire. There's a moment where like, oh, it could happen. And then it doesn't, because obviously it doesn't. And the battle starts, and I think Yusuf is struck down, and so is Niccolo. But Niccolo survives, and Yusuf is like, he sees Yusuf presumably dead on the ground, and he is heartbroken because he realizes, oh, he does care about this man. He does love this man, and he wishes that he had run away with him rather than try and like, fix anything. And I think there's a line toward the end too where he's like, he lost his faith in God there. And I was like, whoa, that's heavy. And I was so angry at you, Aaron. I was pissed. I was like, I cannot believe you made me go through all of this. And then Yusuf dies. And then Yusuf like breathes a gasp and like wakes up literally in the last line of this fic. And they walk off together, and they're like, nah, they're leaving this life behind, and they're going to figure out what they're going to do.
Immortal characters.
Which now makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I am glad to have that context.
Mm-hmm. I bet this was confusing as fuck without it.
No, not really.
Oh,
it stands on its own pretty well. Like I liked it. I thought it was really good.
Alon, I am surprised.
Really? It was I don't want to say fun. It was bleak. I won't lie to you. It was bleak.
Was dark.
But
yep.
The author was able to imbue a lot of humor into like Yusuf's like voice. I thought it was really well done, and even more so, I thought it was really impressive to because it's told in the third person, and sometimes when like you jump from one character to the other, it's like either really jarring or like basically the same narrative voice all over. But I thought that the author managed to do like Yusuf was really like intense but also really funny and like charming, and Nikki was a little more serious and like had more of the angst behind him because he was having this whole coming
crisis
to Jesus
of faith?
Is definitely the
Crisis
wrong
of faith.
crisis of faith is what I'm looking for. Coming to Jesus is actually the opposite of what I was
the other one.
For. Yep. So
he was going away from Jesus.
Exactly, he's leaving Jesus. I thought it was wonderful and was so angry at that fucking, and it's literally the penultimate like paragraph where they're like, oh, Yusuf is dead, and I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. And then he comes back to life in the last line, and they walk off to the west, and I was like, thank God. Thank God.
I think my knowing that he was immortal helped. Because I was like, well, he's not going to die. Like, he's going to come back. That's the shtick.
And I hadn't heard of that concept either. And the author says that they got it from someone else, like the touching and then being stuck in a loop with a soulmate type thing. It's a soulmate time loop hybrid, which I adored and I thought was really great. Yeah,
I was like, well, if we're already doing contrivances, we may as well just do the whole grab bag. And it worked out. And I picked this because it was one of the best written ones. I really specifically wanted to do Old Guard because it's fun, and why not? And I'm trying really hard to like not do the magicians for every episode. And
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. This is one of the few sort of like pieces of content where I was like, yeah, I bet this has some interesting stuff to parse through. And time loop seemed like an interesting mashup with immortality. I was like, how are they going to handle, like, how would you make a time loop relevant or interesting to an immortal being? Does it matter? Because if you're immortal, you have all time anyway. So what's the difference between one living one day over and over versus living forever? So I thought that was kind of an interesting, that was like sort of the thought process behind like, okay, I'm going to pick this tag for this fandom. And then it didn't really navigate that at all. It's very much an origin story, but I still think it's really, it is a really well written story, and I really enjoyed it.
It's a good intro to the fandom, I think. So very good choice. I was also thinking part of the time loop fics that I've read is them trying to, it's the frustration of not knowing, like, what is the inciting incident, like, what is the universe trying to tell us? And you as a reader know it's telling you to fucking kiss, you know, stop being idiots and kiss each other. But there's always like that frustration that's present in those fics, and I feel like as a reader, I have that frustration too, just at them being frustrated at being dumb. I get it, it builds tension, but it annoys me sometimes. But this doesn't have that because the concept is so well known. Everyone knows, like, oh, a soulmate time loop? That sounds bad. I got to go back to shooting some arrows, so see ya. Yeah.
They're like, oh, this is what this is. Yeah. There's like an establishment to it, which kind of goes back to when we talked about soulmates, like having some kind of like, when it really influences the ways in which people operate, it tends to work a little bit better than just being like a thing that is like haphazardly glued on top of the existing universe. Like, it's nice that there's this, like, it actually shifts the culture in some way, and that is like a resonant thing throughout the narrative. Like, there's a reason for it, and there's behavior that changes accordingly.
Very much enjoyed it. Amazing choice. I would give this like a 3.9. I love the pregnant pause you've left me for me to like say, oh, you know what? I'll give you the 4.
I'm like, I'll give you chances. No, it's fine.
Hang on. Well, let me look through it. No, I'm trying to remember. Listen, our ratings mean nothing.
Our ratings do mean
There's
nothing.
so many factors. I haven't eaten. You know, I got off work just recently.
I'm being persnickety because it's fun and part of my personality.
But I usually just go by feeling. Here, I'll give you the 4.
Thank you.
It is very good. Now as I'm rereading it, here's the other thing. Also, this might have been the first fic I read from this batch of fics that we're reading for this recording. So it's been a longer second, and I had to go back and refresh my memory. You're right. I'll give you the 4. It is very good. Very, very
Let that be a lesson to you children, that if you bother your friends for long enough, and give them enough give a guilt trip, they will give you slightly higher ratings on the things that you send to them.
I didn't think this through about what this is doing to your complex.
You can negatively reinforce behaviors or positively reinforce negative behaviors. Whatever it is, I win. So I'm good. Oh, goodness. All right. So I guess it's time for me to talk about the one that you sent me. Yeah?
It sure is. What did I send you, Erin?
It is. So you sent me a fic, and it's called No Place I'd Rather Be by author Backfire. And it is a BuzzFeed worth it parentheses web series, clothes parentheses, RPF fic.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, so I was on board. It's cool. I fucking love Worth It. I think Stephen Lim is a genius, frankly. I think he's great. And Andrew is also quite lovely. I think Adam is hilarious. And Rie is the other character in this. And Rie is like easily one of my favorite BuzzFeed, maybe ex-BuzzFeed now, people. There was just, before I get into it, I just want to like preface it with a little asterisk that like there was something a little weird to me about reading RPF of like YouTube personalities, because YouTube personalities have like, they're not portraying themselves necessarily, like it's not a direct like representation of who they are as people, but they are not putting on a character at all. So it just felt a little bit like playing Barbie dolls with like real humans who I was like, Stephen Lim has a girlfriend. Like, I know that.
Your point?
Yeah, it was just like there was just that little bit of hesitation of like this like vaguely parasocial relationship situation going on, and then I was like, and it goes in the box on the shelf, and I don't worry about it because he's never gonna hear this. It's gonna be fine. But also, this was delightful. That asterisk and recognition of vague sort of like aside, the summary of this for all that lead up is being with Steven is like being home.
I forgot about that.
That's the summary. I love that. It was not fucking around. This fic read like a rom-com, and I was about it. So I didn't take notes, which is either going to go really great or really poorly, and we'll find out soon. But it basically, this fic follows along with their filming of their Japan Worth It episode. I did not bother to go look and see if they had like changed details in this fic or if this is like actually the episode that they made. I assume that it's the episode they made. It's been a long time since I've seen their Japan series, but it's the one where they're doing like the really expensive coffee. And so basically the beginning of the fic is them being in Japan. It's hot as balls. Andrew is unhappy. This is like from Andrew's perspective, but also in the third person, kind of like the previous fic. And Andrew was like, I am a dumb white boy and it is too humid and we've had to travel by train and everything is miserable and I'm just so unhappy with my whole life. And Steven is his usual puppy dog self being like, I'm from here, it's cool. Just like living his whole like best self. And so they're traveling and they're like getting ready and they're just like, you know, hanging around. And they're trying to get to where they need to go. And at one point, they do their like coffee tasting. And it's delicious. They do their episode. They're filming. Great. And afterwards, there's like chocolate that somebody gives Steven. And Steven is like, oh my God, this chocolate is like symphonic. It harmonizes with the coffee that we just had. And it's so perfect. And Andrew just like has had it. Like he has had a day. He's done. He's like, Steven is so full of shit. Like the cameras aren't even rolling. Blah. And it just sort of like explodes out of him of like, you don't have to make everything into a fucking metaphor, Steven. Like, and so they kind of have this fight. And Steven shuts down. And that is like a moment where you're like, oh no, the anvil has dropped and like things are weird. So then it's sort of the next day and Andrew is like, I kind of fucked up. I kind of did this. And Adam's like, you're an idiot. And it's like, okay. But like, how bad could it really be? But it's actually kind of bad. Like him and like Andrew and Steven clearly have this little like wedge between them now that wasn't there before. And it's weird. And so they go through this whole day and they're supposed to film a new segment. They go to this castle. They're going to do this whole thing. And it's just kind of like everything's weird. They get through it though. And like Andrew tries to talk to Steven and Steven's like, sorry, I know I'm a lot. Like I get it. Like I understand why you freaked out. And Andrew's like, no, that like isn't really what it was. I was just really tired and like grumpy. And Steven's like, no, it's okay, I get it, and just kind of like puts the kibosh on it. And like Andrew walks away from that being like, like there's still something wrong. I guess we're good though, but like they're clearly just like there's something not quite right. And so they get to the end of the day. Andrew goes to sleep, and before he goes to bed, Adam again is like, you're an idiot, you need to talk to Steven, blah blah blah. And when Andrew wakes up the next morning, Adam comes in because he's late again. And it's the same morning that he had the morning before. And he's like, what the fuck? What the fuck? And though I did not take a note at this moment in time, I do remember being like, oh yeah, this is a time loop fic. Because up until this point, it's pretty long. Like everything that I just explained happens actually, it goes in pretty great detail to get to that point. Mm-hmm. By the time I got to this, like the start of the time loop, I was like, oh, I just thought this was a fanfic that I was reading.
I forgot.
Yeah, I literally forgot that time loop was a conceit in this thing. But it goes back to the morning of the day that they just lived through. And so Andrew is like, he's very confused because he's like, wait, Adam comes to wake him up again like he did the morning before. He's running late like he was the morning before. And Adam says the same, like, you should talk to Steven, like, you're an idiot. And like, you know, what you said yesterday was really uncool, which is exactly what he said the day before. And Andrew's like, and he goes outside and Rie starts saying the same stuff that she said the day before. And he goes up to Steven, and it turns out Steven is also in the time loop with him. And he's like, oh, thank God. I don't know what I was going to do if it was like just me. they relive the day over and over, kind of testing different theories. And they are like, well, what if we do the same thing again? Like, if we do the same thing over again, will it happen the same way again? What if we change, like, one thing? Does that cause a cascading chain of effects? Or, like, does it, like, what will happen? So they first start off being like, okay, we just need to, like, do what we did and just, like, ride this out because this is weird. And then they end up having a couple of days where they're like, well, there's no consequences. So what if we just ditch filming and, like, go to this castle thing that we've been in front of for, like, 3 days and haven't even seen? And they're like, okay. So they go and do that instead. And they're like, they're working through some of that discomfort, just like slowly but surely, as they're like hanging out more over these days. And so finally, during one of the loops, they like ditch the rest of the crew and they go to a bar. And at this point, they've like talked it out. They've kind of like hashed through like Andrew being upset and being like, no, really, like I was wrong to yell at you. And Steven being like, no, really, it's okay. And like they just kind of have this like thing. And they decide to go to a bar. And Steven Lim does not drink. So he starts having, you know, these highly alcoholic beverages at this bar. And Andrew's like pretty sober. He's like, oh, I can handle my liquor a lot better than Steven can. And they're like sitting next to each other. And then they start leaning in next to each other. And they're talking. And they play Never Have I Ever, which
yes,
of course becomes a thing. And it starts off kind of innocent, where it's like, never have I ever, like, and they've like, at this point, like one of their things was like they went to go dye Andrew's hair, like, because they were like, well, there's no consequences, so it's pink now. And so they come back, they're like, never have I ever dyed my hair. Oh shit, we both have dyed hair. And as they get progressively more drunk, the questions get like progressively more sexual, as is the case with Never Have I Ever.
Yep.
That's like what that game is designed for. And so eventually they're like, never have I ever had a threesome. And like, and it like, Steven is like, well, you know, I've never had sex, so whatever. And so it's like a whole thing. And then one of the questions, I forget who asked it. It must have been Steven, said, never have I ever fantasized about a coworker. And Andrew does not drink his drink. Which, if you've ever played Never Have I Ever, means that he has never actually done that. And Steven immediately is like, we're done. Like, hands off, and backs up, and it, like, ruins the moment. Because Steven is like, oh, shit. Like, you don't know this because you're not in his head, but he's clearly, like, backing off. And Andrew's like, oh, I missed my moment. Because Andrew has, like, been slowly sort of, like, falling for Steven, and it's not until that moment that he, like, figures out that that's kind of what's going on. Where, like, this whole time loop, he's just been like, Steven's a really great guy. Wow, I'm so glad he's my friend. He's so funny. Huh. He's really good at what he does. Wow. Without him, this entire show would fall apart. Wow. He's so great. And it takes until that moment for him to be like, oh, fuck. I really like this boy.
That was a great recap.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. So then he's like, oh, shit. And then they go home. They go back to their hotel room, I should say. And they, like, don't talk about it. It's, like, not a thing. So then the next day, when they're in the time loop again, it's really fucking weird for everyone involved. And then, wait, no, it's not the next time loop the next day.
It is.
It is. Okay.
Because, the next day is, Steven is really awkward, basically, and is, like, very clearly avoiding the subject. And he, like, goes, hangs out with Rie a lot more than, like, hangs out with Andrew and stuff.
That's what it is. Thank you.
Yeah, I think at this point he also says, you know, I think we should stop doing all the crazy stuff we have been doing because any day could be the one to stick and we shouldn't jeopardize the show that way.
And so they're in this like awkward space where they're both kind of avoiding each other until the very end of the day when Andrew like is like, fuck it, I'm going to go talk to him. So he goes to talk to him and he runs into Steven because Steven was coming to talk to him. And so they're in their hotel room. They're like, all right, we should talk about this. Like, we actually need to have a conversation. And it's kind of the quintessential fan fiction dumb boy conversation, but it's actually super well done because it's actually written out, which I love, where Steven's like, you know, it's okay. Like, I understand it got weird. I was drunk, but like, this doesn't have to mean anything because like, you're my friend and I, whatever. And Andrew kind of like Annie's up and is like, what does he even say?
So that the end of that conversation basically ends with them being frustrated anyway. They kind of both agree like, oh, it was nothing. And Andrew leaves being like, I didn't want it to be nothing.
The reason I can't find it is because he doesn't say it. That's what it is. Is like, he really wants to say something, but he doesn't.
And then they go through another day in the loop, I think. And at the end of that evening, Andrew has a epiphany.
Yes, that's what it is. So they realize, first of all, that the reason they're stuck in this time loop is because on the first day of filming, when they were in front of the castle or whatever, Andrew picked up a cat. A cat, as in un gato. Like,
Un gato.
A cat. And this cat was like, Steven looked at him and was like, that cat knows some shit. And Andrew was like, no, it's just a cat. It's cool. And then the cat like runs away or whatever. And that was like the first day of the time loop. And in front of this cat, he had said, if I could live this day over, I wouldn't do anything different. And this is the day of like the fight. And it was kind of mean to say and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, he realizes this epiphany comes to him and he's like, the cat. And so he's like, Steven, we gotta go find that fucking cat. It was the cat. And Steven's like, are you sure? And Andrew's like, it's crazy, but it's like the only thing that makes sense at this point because we've been in this for a week and this is fucked up. So like, how weird would it be if it was the cat? So they go try to find the cat. And so they go, like, they get on the train, they like run around, they're trying to find this cat. And they like,
it's also late at night.
It's late at night. They can't find this cat. And they try really hard to be like, well, it doesn't speak English because it's a magical cat in Japan. And then they were like, well, if it's magic, does it matter? And then, so they do have a funny thing where it's like, Steven says, I wonder if this is what Ryan and Shane feel like when they're hunting ghosts or whatever. And Andrew says, if that's the case, I think that makes both of us Ryan in this situation, which is really funny. So they realize that like they're not going to find this cat and they just kind of sit there and Andrew's like, well, you know, I guess we're both idiots. And Steven just kind of takes a moment. He's like, well, did you mean what you said? And Andrew's like, mean what? And Steven's like, when you said you wouldn't change things if you could redo them. And Andrew kind of has this moment of like, at the time I did mean it, but like now like there are some things that I would have liked to change. And that is the thing where Steven's like, you have to stop. Like, this cannot be a thing. And Andrew kind of has a moment of like, stop what? But he knows exactly what he's talking about. And Steven's like, look, I was honest with you. Like, I panicked. I almost went in for a kiss at the bar, but I didn't. And I know that's not what you want. Which is like such a clear and such a fanfic thing. And Andrew's brain breaks because he's like, wait, what? And Steven just like barrels through and he's like, I can't be casual. That's not how I am. Like, whatever. Cool. Fine. I can deal with it on my own. We never have to talk about it again. And Andrew's like, no. Wait a minute. This is insane. This is ridiculous. And Steven's like, what is so funny? And Andrew's like, it wasn't nothing. I wasn't drunk. I wanted to kiss you, but I thought you were drunk, so I didn't kiss you. And like, it was a whole thing. This has been a delightful misunderstanding. And so they kiss, and then they go back to their hotel room, and they have a grand old time.
They sure do.
They do. It's very soft. It's very cute. It doesn't get too like smutty. Like, honestly, like they make out for a little bit, and like there's some implications that they like go further, but it's not shown on screen. And I actually think that works really well in this fic, because it was just like it's kept in the like rom-com vein very clearly.
Yeah.
And then they wake up the next day and it's raining. Which is new, which means the time loop is broken. Woohoo!
Yes, we love the rain.
So the time loop is broken. They move on with their lives. They are together. It's very cute. And, you know, Adam no longer has to call Andrew an idiot. Hooray.
Hooray.
That wasn't the longest summary I've ever given, but it certainly wasn't the shortest.
Here's the other thing, fellow listeners, is that this fic is tagged also as a slow burn. Which it very much is. So Aaron could have gone on for a while. So that was great. That was a great summary.
Thanks. I really appreciate you gassing me up like this. I had a grand old time. I thought it was delightful. I thought it was incredibly well written. I thought it was very in keeping with what we know of these people. And like, again, we don't actually know these people, but like given their personalities on YouTube, it was like, I got it. Where like Andrew's the kind of like stoic, secretly silly, but more sort of like meh one, and Steven is like very effusive, but actually like hiding a like significant amount of artistic genius, because I think he is really, really well done. The one thing that I wanted to have happen that didn't happen, and I'm totally fine with like the cat being the reason that they were in this time loop. It's cool. It's fine. It's very rom-com. I felt like, because there was a lot of emphasis on Adam always being the one to come to Andrew and be like, you need to talk to him. I thought Adam had done something. I thought Adam was like a witch. Because Adam is like so quiet during Worth It. And like, we know very little about him. And I thought it would just be so funny if at the end it was like, good, it worked. But of course that wasn't what happened, but that's kind of what I thought might happen and I was gearing up for. But I had a great time anyway, and it was very delightful, and I really enjoyed it, even when I was reminded halfway through the fic that it was a time loop fic.
Oh good, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was very it was good. I had a good time. So
I would rate this a solid 4. It was nice. Very good. I could even be convinced of like a 4.2. So
oh wow.
It was really delightful. I have not eaten yet, so this is just me being a nice person, Alan.
I appreciate that. You are nicer. You are a nicer person.
So yeah, this was really, really great. Thank you for sharing
it.
It was very fun.
Of course.
Even if it was a little weird to read BuzzFeed fan fiction.
I feel that.
Yep. And we move on.
So we do have a third fic for y'all that was recommended. We don't know by whomst. They did not leave their name. But I will say thank you. So thanks for that. It is a Ready or Not 2019 fanfic, which, if you're not familiar, is a horror thriller from 2019.
Can I tell you a true thing that is vaguely embarrassing, but you'll laugh?
Absolutely.
When we picked this fic,
yeah,
I didn't think of this film. I thought it was that weird magic film with Mark Ruffalo and the guy from The Social Network. The one in Isla Fisher. Where they do tricks to hide embezzlement or something.
Now You See Me?
That one! I didn't remember the title. And so when I started reading this fic, I went, what the fuck?
Oh my god.
And was very confused.
You know what this is? This is this is the equivalent of parents going to watch a SpongeBob movie and then getting played the fucking trailer to Jaws or something.
Yep, and I am not much of a horror movie person, y'all.
Nope.
So I have seen the Tumblr gifs of this movie and said no thank you. And so this fic, it started off on an interesting note for me. I was ready for there to be weird magic tricks, and it was not. There was a devil.
This is my favorite fact. I am blessed on this day.
You're welcome. I knew I had to cop to it because it was funny, but I'm also wow.
Your dedication to the entertainment of our listeners is applauded.
Thank you. I was whatever, people will think it's funny.
So this is not a Now You See Me fic. This is a Ready or Not fic.
Yep.
And it is entitled... It's titled Try, Die Again. It is written by Croik, Croik, on Archive
Kronk's
of Our Own.
Evil cousin.
Aaron, please.
I can't. I'm so sorry.
And the summary reads, after the dust settles, Grace awakens to find herself exactly where she started, with the card in her hand, ready to play again. But this time will be different. For both their sakes, it will have to be. Time loop AU. And this takes the pairing of... Okay, so first and foremost, I need to say, if you have not seen this movie, I don't know that you're going to fully get everything that the fic is talking about. Because I will say this is a great, sequel to that movie. It is it fits perfectly into the canon of that film. But this takes the main character, Grace, and her would-be brother-in-law and pairs them together.
I felt like I got a decent amount of context from this, but it would have been better if I had known what was going on a little bit more.
That's good. Yeah, to be clear, they do a great job of explaining what all has happened. Yeah. I think if you've seen the movie, you just it clicks. Yeah, it really it takes that fic to the extra level, I think. But yes, if you're not familiar with the concept of Ready or Not, the film, it's basically this woman named Grace has just gotten married to her husband. She's just gotten married, and she's an orphan. So, and her husband is part of this family of game makers. They make a bunch of board games. Think Hasbro, Mattel, Operation Sorry, Clue, and all of that kind of stuff.
Mr. Evelyn's dad?
Maybe, perhaps.
Mr. Evelyn's dad is a professional game maker, so.
Well, I hope one less sinister than the ones that in this movie, because
Yep.
every time that there's a tradition. They're very rich. Grace had to sign like a prenup and all of that, and they had the wedding in their very large estate, very fancy mansion. And then they sit her down on her wedding night and say, you have to play a game that is the rules, and they basically draw a random card. And every time there's a new like addition to the family, they have to do this. They have to play a game. And it can be something as innocuous as Operation, as Clue, as Sorry, as Trouble. But if you pull the hide and seek card, then you have to run and hide. And if the family finds you, they bring you back and they sacrifice you ritualistically. In order, it's like an old bargain that one of their ancestors made with the devil, basically, to obtain and hoard their wealth, their success. And so Grace has just pulled the hide or seek card, and it spends basically the whole night running and hiding and seeking and all of this stuff. So that is the basic concept of the film. And so now just add at the end of the film, if you've seen it, spoiler alert, she makes it. She's alive. It's dawn. The police are coming, and the fic picks up right there and then puts her right back at the beginning of it, and it is genius. I loved this fic. I am opposite of Aaron. I am a huge horror movie buff. I love horror movies, and so the fact that we're talking about a horror like fanfic, I cannot explain how happy I was. So the whole conceit is that every time that Grace goes through the evening, she learns from her mistakes and tries again, basically gets out with less injuries, and she's like, all right, I've really done it this time. And then right as the police start to show up, she blinks and she's back in the chair again, pulling the card, and she has to restart. And so you get this sense of like really anger and frustration of being like, I have won this game twice now and I'm still stuck here, still having to like run for my life, have to kill these other people. This is the other thing, this fic is so graphic. And
Yep.
She has an argument with what is his name? Lebane, I think.
LaVale.
LaVale. Yes, LaVale. That's what it is. And which is the ancient like spirit that made the deal with their ancestor.
Sounds like a demon to me. And we don't invite demons now, do we, Alan?
We don't. No, they did.
Yeah, never invite a demon.
So she has this argument with this demon, LaVale, and is angry and says, I've won. What more do you want? And he basically says something like, you haven't won fully. You haven't won in the right way. Once you do that, you'll be free. And she's pissed. And so she goes at it again. And most of the time she is, in her head, she thinks that she has to actually win the game of hide and seek and not be found all night. So there's go-arounds where she like hides really well and is not seen up until the very end, and that frustrates her to no end. So if you're familiar with the movie, there's a character who is her brother-in-law who starts off really creepy and like he's an alcoholic and like hits on her at the rehearsal dinner, and you're like, oh, this guy's sleazy. But you realize that the reason he is having like this reaction is because he knows what his family's capable of and basically doesn't want any part of it, but also feels like loyal to them because he loves them. And in the movie, he basically tries to help her, but it's like at the very end and it's too late. So he switches sides, it's too late, and he gets killed. And even in the movie, you kind of get a feeling that like they had better chemistry than her and her husband. So I see how this pairing was born. In one of the pass-throughs in this fic, she sees him again and tries to basically convince him to help her earlier when she can still do something. It doesn't work. He gets shot in the neck, and as he's bleeding by his wife, he's always shot in the neck by his wife, which is how he died in the movie, which is brilliant. And he's bleeding out, dying. And then I think she is shot by someone else in the family, and they, as they're bleeding out, they do this creation of man type thing where they touch fingertips basically. Yeah. And then she resets and she looks across the table and she realizes that now he also remembers the last pastor, and this is on her 4th or 5th time. So now she has dragged him in somehow, and they keep doing all these different things to try and figure out how to like get her away, and their tensions build and they're like getting closer to each other, and they're like, oh man. And I think at one point like the line is even thrown out where he says, oh, I wish I'd met you a little earlier, haha. And so by the end, Grace is at her wit's end, and she's now just pulling guns and killing people like first side. She's like, because she has a successful night where she hides from everyone completely. Like, she tricks them into thinking that she's run outside, and so everyone's searching for her outside, but she's literally under a bed. And she makes it to dawn, and it still doesn't work. And so she's like, fuck you, fuck this, I'm killing everyone, because apparently me winning the game fair and square like 10 times now is not enough for this demon. Mm-hmm. And so she's going around killing people, and now she's trying to like find a way to save Daniel too, which is the brother-in-law. It doesn't work. They die. And she asks him to meet him in like the secret passageway that only a few people in the family know about. They meet. They have passionate sex really quickly. Yep. Good for them. Loved it for them.
Okay. There is viscera. We don't need that.
So they have sex. It's great for them. And then she is like, all right, I need you to wait here because every other time you have been shot by your fucking bitch of a wife, and I need you to not die. She's like, this is now, I think, the way. So she's trying to save him. Oh, and also there's maids that die throughout the course of the film. And so she finds the first one that's about to die. She stops her and says, hey, they're going to kill you. And she's like, oh, I'm not supposed to talk to you after midnight. And Grace says, listen, they are here to kill me. If you see me die, you are a witness. They are then going to close off any loose ends. You get the other maids, wait by the door. The moment the door is unlocked, run out and call the police. You need to get out. And so luckily the maid does heed the advice and leaves. And so Grace she's finally taken off the wedding dress, which is part of the thing, is like she has hated wearing the wedding dress, and she's now wearing a pair of Daniel's boxers and a button-down shirt of Daniel's. And she's going around killing all of the family. She's unfortunately found and eventually like subdued, and Daniel is shot in the leg because of course he didn't stay in the tunnel like they needed to. And Grace's husband, I think his name is Alex, I forget.
I think it is Alex. Yeah, we don't like Alex.
We don't like Alex. Even in the movie, we didn't like Alex. But Alex is very affected by the fact that she fucked his brother, basically. Which fair in the context. Yes, fair in the context.
I think he's allowed to have feelings about that.
I guess so. He was just aiding his family and trying to murder her, but okay.
Well, we can hold two truths at once.
You're right. Very mature. Love that for us.
We can hold space for both of these realities.
Yep. So the only family members that are alive at this point are Charity, who is Daniel's wife, Alex, who is Grace's husband, and their aunt Helen, who is crazy. She's a character. And so it's about to be done. They're carrying out like this Latin chanting that they have to do. Grace is bound up in the table and she's not able to get out. Daniel is bound and he still has this arrow that was shot through his thigh. He uses his like one free hand to like nudge the arrow out, uses that to cut his binds, and basically tackles people, and that's how they get out of that alive. And so the way that the curse works is that if the sun has risen and Grace is not dead, then the family blows up, like quite literally, like just
literally. I was like, what? They go boom.
They
into
go boom.
Chunks. Into chuckarunos.
It's
gross.
It is graphic in the film, and it is hilarious. And so what Daniel knows that Grace doesn't is that they managed to kill the rest of the family. It's just her and Daniel. Daniel's bleeding out. And she said, I'm going to save you. Like, I think that's what needs to happen. And he says, no, I'm going to die because of the curse. And Grace says, no, you don't know that because you have died by your wife's hand every night. And then he reminds her that there was one night where she died before him. And so then he got to experience the kaboom. And so Grace realizes there's only one way out of this. And so she strangles him to death. Right as the sun rises. Once the sun is up, she's like, oh, fuck. And then starts doing CPR on Daniel and miraculously brings him back. So because he died and was not around for the deadline, he's now okay. Yep. And they walk off into the sunset. And so there's the thing and what Grace realizes at the end is that having won the game the first time, she didn't feel victory. She didn't feel like she won anything. She just survived. But now, having saved Daniel and having saved the three maids, which called the police, she feels like she earned her win, and that broke the curse essentially.
That is an accurate summation of this fic. I mean, we do love a loophole ending. We love a loophole.
We do love a loophole.
It was very funny where she's like, I'm gonna strangle him. Oh, fuck.
Come back.
Yep. She was like, all right, never mind. Unstrangle.
I thought it was very well done. As a fan of the movie, I thought that the author took elements from the movie, and it was also written like I could see it being an adaptation. You know how films usually do like novel adaptations, or they used to, but like there'll be novel adaptations of some films. I could see this being like an adaptation of it because it's written with the same kind of like irreverent tone as the film. And I thought it was smartly done. It plugged into all of the canon, and it was also surprisingly creative with the way it killed people.
I will 100% give it all the points for creativity, and it's super well written, and it is clearly in the style of the thing that it is part of, right? Like, I was at a disservice because I don't like horror movies, didn't see the material, the original source material, and don't much care for like graphic stuff like this. Like, it's just not my thing. So I was at a disadvantage from that perspective, but I can absolutely give it credit where credit is due in terms of being a well-written, well-done story that set out to do a thing, and by God, did it do it.
It sure did. Over and over.
Yeah. I mean, also, there is something a little bit wonderful about Grace just, like, murdering everyone all the time. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's that moment in a horror movie or in a thriller even where, like, the person... the victim fights back and becomes the like aggressor, and you're like, yeah, fuck him up. And so you just get that over and over this because she learns more and more every time she does it. It's great.
She goes feral by the end. She's like, fuck yeah. Like, I kind of pictured her, like, this didn't actually happen, but I could 100% picture her with, like, you know, like machine guns or whatever, just being like, ah! And like mowing them down. Because it was like that energy of like, that's it. I'm here to fuck shit up, and I do not care anymore. Like, I have lost all semblance of like, I'm not playing by anyone's rules anymore. Just fuck it. I'm like, I'm annihilating you all. And that is like, that can be really satisfying at the end of like watching somebody really struggle, where it's like, okay, they've gone full feral. Great.
Yeah. Fully agree. So Aaron,
I was just gonna say, what would you
it?
give
I beat you to it. I beat you to it.
No. Okay. I am a nice person. I'm gonna give this a 3.8 based on what it's doing. If I were like, this is not something I will revisit. And like, if this were just like, I wouldn't have even read it if like this weren't the podcast. But it is really well done, and I will give it a 3.8. And I have a lot of respect for this writer, who is clearly very good at what they do.
Nice. I would give it a 4.2, but that's because I love horror movies. So this was up my alley.
Well, that lands you at a 4, which is great. That's still a very strong score.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, in our useless rubric, but...
I like to think this one was sent to Alan, like with the note to Alan, because I fucking loved it.
It might have been. People know that you like horror movies, right? Like, we've talked about that.
I don't know. I hope so. If y'all have any more horror fics, send them my way.
My favorite thing was when you posted on Instagram your stories, and it was like, Conjuring 1, Conjuring 2, Conjuring 3, and I was like, ooh, Alan's having a day. I was like, that's a lot of Conjuring,
you know,
buddy.
You bring that up. So recently, so the third Conjuring came out, and my local Regal had, they were showing the Conjuring 1 on the Wednesday before it came out, the new one came out. They showed the Conjuring 2 on the Thursday, and then I went to go watch the new one when it came out. And I was doing this thing where I was posting my ticket stub, and I said The Conjuring, and then The Conjuring 2. Oh, no, what was it? What was it that I was saying? I wasn't saying The Conjuring. I was saying, Let's Get Spooky. I was saying, let's get spooky. And then for this Conjuring 2, I said, let's get spooky 2. And then for the third night, I said, let's get spooky, The Devil Made Me Do It, which is the title of the third film. And not a single person laughed. And I was angry. I was like, people, I literally had this thought where I was like, I'm ahead of my time. People just don't understand my humor.
Like, I am a tortured artist, and no one gets it. And I am these plebeians don't deserve me.
You don't understand, Aaron. I made that plan on Wednesday, and I was like, this is gonna kill. I laughed for like 20 minutes at my own joke.
I'm gonna argue that maybe you hyped it up a little bit in your own head.
I'm sure I did. But no, not even like a little, like a haha emoji or anything.
Yeah, they didn't even do the lazy easy react emoji. That is so funny. Yeah, I was not gonna be the one to do that, but someone should have.
Someone should have. I agree.
Yeah.
You know what? That's the plight of an artist.
It is, you know, you're never understood until it's too late, you know, like artists don't get recognized until later for the geniuses and visionaries that they were.
Yep.
Do you know what would be really funny? I wonder if Mai sent this before we opened up the name on the form.
Possibly. Yeah, because there was a period where we didn't have that option.
The only reason I say that is because I'm now remembering that we had that whole conversation about it when we did the It episode.
Oh my god, so true. I forgot we talked about it.
And I remember Mai being like, Alan is my person. Alan's like Al, I get it. I get Alan. So I was like, cool, great. And then Mai sent in a bunch. So Mai, if this was you, good job. Whoever it was, good job. But know. Also, like
incredible. Loved it.
Whoever it was, delightful.
Well,
what an episode.
I think that about brings us to the end of our episode.
And welcome to an episode of the Fic List, everybody.
Yeah, welcome back. We're so excited to have you.
Can you imagine? I've been waiting this whole episode to make that joke, and no, it's not going to land. So, how do our 7 dear friends get in touch with us, Alan?
Well, Aaron, Twitter is the best way. We're at Fic List.
Yep.
You can pop over to our Instagram. I don't think there's anything on it, but
nope, don't do that. It's going the way of Facebook very quickly.
Yep, we don't have a Facebook page. It's gone the way of the dodo. And you can go to our Tumblr. Also, a message is there. The lovely Caitlin is our moderator poster on there, and
she runs it. I mean, full stop. Yeah. She runs that Tumblr. Like, I do nothing. So.
She's great, and every time I go on Tumblr and look at our account, I'm like, this is hilarious. Wow. Thanks, Caitlin.
Yep. Go to Tumblr. It's the ficlistpodcast.tumblr.com.
Nice.
Yep.
Look at you knowing it off the top of your head.
Yeah. I had to write that in our Ko-Fi bio recently because we were also now on Ko-Fi. So, yeah, if you really like this podcast and feel like helping us out, the Ko-Fi exists to offset the cost of making the podcast. The goal is not to like make this a profitable, like, you know, money-making venture. Like, that feels wrong given the source material that we're pulling from and FanWorks and that ethos in general. Instead, this is truly just like offsetting the cost of like keeping our SoundCloud up and like that kind of like the things that cost money to make this happen. So if you feel like tossing a couple dollars our way, we'll gladly take it and put it towards the creation of this podcast somehow. And that is, we are on Ko-Fi. The link is connected to our Twitter, I think. But I think it's like Ko-Fi/the Fic List or something like that.
And lastly, if you want like a way to support us that does not involve like giving any money, you please rate and review us on like Apple Podcasts. It helps us get a larger reach out there. Helps the podcast find more of a fan base, if you will.
If you will, yes, because we are on Apple Podcasts, we are on Spotify, we're on Podbean, maybe, I don't know.
That sounds right. Podbean, Podkite,
something. SoundCloud. We're on SoundCloud. Basically anywhere that I could get an RSS feed, we're there. Hooray.
Exactly.
So yeah, but Apple reviews are really, really beneficial to podcast creators because they do sort of like bump the podcast popularity. So if you really like us, drop us a review on Apple. Thanks.
Another one in the books.
Yep. And as y'all well know, we're going to record another one of these in like 5 minutes. So... It's gonna get
excited.
Weird. Just wait until the next one. I'm sure it's gonna be weird. All right. Bye, friends.
All right. See you later.
Bye.